If you're feeling consumed by shame, blame, guilt, or hinging your success or failure as a parent on how to handle your kiddo's tantrum behavior, then this video is for you. Today, I'm going to be talking about 3 specific must-dos and 3 things to avoid whenever your kiddo is having a tantrum so that you can effectively move past these negative feelings and know how to respond with confidence and with a plan of action each and every time a tantrum does occur. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Courtney. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. I help parents of young children go from overwhelmed and reactive to calm and centered so that they can effectively respond to their child during these challenging moments in parenting. If you want to build more positive and healthy relationship skills, be sure to hit that subscribe bell and button to be notified each and every time I drop a new video. Okay, so we're going to first talk about the don'ts and then we're going to go into the do's. The first don't is to express negative emotional feelings. So don't express negative emotional feelings. Here, I'll write this down. These things you want to avoid. And when I say negative, I'll say here, express. When I say negative feelings, I mean specifically like mad, angry, and frustrated, right? I'll even put these here. A lot of times these are the common ones that we see parents struggle with when their kiddo is engaged in the throes of a tantrum. Mad, angry, and frustrated might actually take a physical manifestation though of looking like yelling. It might look like stomping your feet while you're walking away. It might look like walking away, like turning your back to your kiddo, to what's happening. It might be like raising your voice. It might be picking up the toys that they're throwing and slamming them on the counters a little bit aggressively. So like those can be like a physical manifestation of mad, angry, and frustrated. And the reason is we really want to look at, kiddos are really learning how to emotionally regulate themselves in these moments. They are looking to their caregivers to do that. We are their parent, we are their teachers essentially as their parents, and we're showing them how to handle these difficult emotions themselves. And this really is emotional regulation on our end as a parent, which we therefore model for our kiddos. And they then themselves learn by seeing us cope with these emotions, how to do it themselves. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this as well, I did talk about this in much more detail in my very first video. The number one most important skill for parents to master to effectively handle tantrums, emotional regulation. So I'll link it either below or in this video somewhere. You can check that out. I do go into that in a little bit more detail. But when we're talking right now about this, we want to make sure that we're avoiding the physical manifestation of this. Again, angry, mad, frustrated, for instance. And instead, what I would look at doing is we want to demonstrate tolerance and acceptance. And what tolerance and acceptance might look like is more like the physical manifestation of tolerance and acceptance would be staying in like close proximity to your kiddo when they're having this tantrum. Let's say you're getting down onto their level. You're kneeling down on your knees. You're providing, let's say, an empathetic statement, saying, I can see that you're upset. I see that you're frustrated. You're acknowledging their feelings in these moments. You're also demonstrating this with a calm and neutral tone of voice. So again, something maybe we're seeing in mad, angry, frustrated is yelling, a raised, short tone of voice. But now we're providing the empathetic statement in a calm and neutral tone of voice. And then another physical manifestation or physical expression of tolerance and acceptance would be providing a safe space for them to understand that you're there whenever they're ready, essentially. So you can tell them like, I'll be here when you're ready, right? You don't actually have to stop that tantrum in that moment. You can let that tantrum continue. Obviously, we're maintaining safety at all times with our kiddo, but it doesn't have to be the tantrum is happening and I need to do any and all things right now to stop it. We can let the rise of the emotional feelings have its natural kind of ebb and flow while you are there. Your presence is there and you are providing a great example of an emotionally regulated adult who knows how to handle these big tantrum or these big feelings while this tantrum's occurring. Okay, so step 2 or number 2 and things to avoid is matching your child's emotional state. So when I say matching their emotional state, I mean, it's kind of like catching feelings, if you're familiar with that term a little bit better. So if my kiddo is mad, angry, and frustrated, and I'm not, but I'm dealing with their challenging behavior, I'm dealing with their tantrum or whatever is happening in that moment, and now I become mad, angry, and frustrated because they're mad, angry, and frustrated, we're now fighting fire with fire, right? And again, I think I gave this caveat with negative emotional feelings. If I didn't, I'm going to give it here. But it's not that you can never have these negative emotions, right? It's not that you can never be mad or angry or frustrated. It's just there's a time and a place essentially for the expression of these. And you really typically kind of want to avoid it in this instance because kiddos are looking to us to essentially model. They're not intentionally looking us to model, but research shows that kids are likely to model emotional regulation based off of how their parents emotionally regulate themselves. So what we do will therefore have an impact on what they do. And if they're mad, angry, and frustrated, we don't want to demonstrate that the proper way to handle being mad, angry, and frustrated is to just, again, still be mad, angry, and frustrated. There's proper ways to handle and cope with that. But in this instance, we want to make sure we're not matching that emotional state. We're not expressing these negative emotional feelings. We want to make sure we're not matching that negative emotional state. In this instance, again, if it's mad, angry, frustrated, we want to be ideally calm, centered, so be like emotionally regulated. I also want to be patient, objective, and solution oriented or solution focused. So I always like to give the example here of first responders because I think they do this beautifully. As if you are a first responder, thank you. What happens is if I'm calling 911, if I'm a first responder, I'm typically helping people in times of crisis, right? When there are significantly negative emotional feelings happening, it's either chaos or crisis, a chaotic situation, there's a crisis situation occurring or something along those lines, where you're having a lot of intense emotions and feelings, and you have to go in as a first responder and be solution oriented. You have to know you're going in with a game plan already, right? You're having an objective mindset. You know what you need to do typically, or an order or process of things to do. And you're going to do that with emotional regulation. Your feelings are not going to be able to play a role. Especially negative feelings in this moment wouldn't be able to play a role into what it is that you actually need to do to help people get to safety, right? Or to figure out what's going on in this crisis situation for someone. And it's essentially the same thing that we as parents do for our kids. They are looking to us. We are their first responders, essentially, when they're having their crisis moment, which is maybe like a tantrum, and big emotional feelings, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to regulate them, and they don't know how to get through that necessarily. They're looking to us to be their first responder to help them find their way. And again, these are this list could go on, but these are a good chunk of the qualities that we want to make sure that we're demonstrating in these moments that first responders also demonstrate too. And also give an example. I had a very simple example of a parent that I work with. Her and her son, he was a school-age kiddo, a little bit older, but he needed help with homework time. And mom was tasked with doing this. Kiddo would come home, and there was a lot of things going on, but he would come home mad, angry, and basically frustrated a lot of the times. And when it was time to do the homework, that's exactly what he was. He was at a point where mad, angry, and frustrated, looked like yelling at mom, saying mean things. He would get up from the table, he'd walk away, he would do anything that would distract her or kind of delay having to actually do homework together. And mom, unfortunately, her patience, like most people, would start to wear thin after a while, and she would catch those feelings and she would say mean things back to him. And that kind of began a vicious little bit of a feedback loop and a cycle that typically ended, homework time was always ended in turmoil and frustration, and sometimes not even with all the homework done. And it put a decent strain on the parent-child relationship in that dynamic. And I just give that example because it's very simple, but it's one that does occur a lot. And it does, again, tie back to emotional regulation and our ability to, observe that, yes, my kiddo is having these feelings and these challenges at this time, but I myself am going to remain calm and centered and grounded as best of my abilities and not actually catch these feelings. Because then we start to see what's happening through glasses that are rose-colored, right? Rose-colored, colored of emotion, and not necessarily objective and solution-oriented and focused. Okay, so number 3 is disciplining from a negative emotional state. So we seem, discipline, to have a theme here with negative emotional feelings, but when we're disciplining from, we want to avoid disciplining from this negative emotional state for a few reasons. One, it's likely to be ineffective. It's more likely to be ineffective. Every kiddo and every family is obviously different, and sometimes it does require a lot of trial and error whenever you're implementing a discipline or consequence. But essentially here, if we're seeing through rose-colored glasses, if we're in a heightened negative emotional state, we're matching our kiddos' feelings, that's influencing our decision-making, right? And we're able to make as solid, logical decisions through emotion-colored glasses as our first responder parents are, where we are calm-centered, grounded, and solution-oriented and focused, not so much. So the consequence or discipline may not be effective. The punishment sometimes may not fit the crime is one other way of saying it, right? Where, again, our emotions are kind of running that show, and we feel that this would be very appropriate, but logically, it might actually not be very appropriate. It just might be we're making a decision from our own feelings in the moment as a parent. And that does kind of play a role in this too as well. If you are brand new to like looking at challenging behavior or tantrums through this way, or practicing these skills, then I do encourage parents, it's okay, to actually not implement discipline or a consequence right now. If you feel that you are really coming from this negative emotional state or space, it's okay to walk away in this instance, because guess what? Your kiddo is likely going to have another tantrum, right? You are going to get to practice it. You're going to have another opportunity. So I do say, take a second here if you are not sure what this discipline or consequence would be, and really reflect from a calm-centered, emotionally regulated space. Once you are in that space, then you can think about what might actually be beneficial to help my kiddo do what I want them to do in this instance, and to stop doing these things that I don't want them to be doing anymore. And this is something I specifically work on with families one-on-one as well. I did this with this mom with the homework, the kiddo who had the homework challenges, because we had to really take a second to get that action plan and that game plan together. And there's two sides to that coin again. What I want to see my kiddo do and what I don't want to see them do. And sometimes it takes different things to accomplish both of those tasks. And so it's okay to take a second, to walk away, to reflect and think about that. And if you want help on this, I'm happy to do that. You can click on the link below for a one-to-one, to schedule a one-to-one appointment with me. But I want to go back to this disciplining from a negative emotional state here as well, because another thing that we as parents may do or feel the need to do is, it feels good to us to exert some sort of form of control, right? In this instance, where if all things are kind of happening, chaos is happening, and I cannot effectively regulate myself, I will likely I can put a consequence in place for my kiddo. And that really is just fulfilling our own emotional need in that moment. It's not really a solution-oriented consequence that's, again, going to help my kiddo, in this instance, get his homework done or do what I need to do. And going back to this as well, one more thing, in the sense of being ineffective or effective, I'll give the example of that mom for the homework. One of the things that she would do when she was really triggered and kiddo would really strike a chord and he would say mean things to her, is she would decide that, he no longer could access technology. He couldn't have his cell phone or his tablet or any of that. And it's a very common consequence, right? But unfortunately for this kiddo in this instance, they had recently moved, they'd relocated, and he was struggling in school to make friends already. And he, his cell phone and technology was his one and only way to have a social connection with peers from his hometown. And mom would inadvertently take that away as a result of the difficulties in struggling with the homework. And that didn't actually help him do any better on his homework, right? And it just strained not only, the social contacts that he had with his peers, but strained the relationship even more between him and his mom, because it was so detrimental, because he was struggling already with making friends at his school. So we want to make sure that these are the foundational kind of starting points that you want to have whenever you are kind of implementing a consequence or a discipline. And if you can come to a decision from that grounded, centered space, then go ahead and give it a shot, and even there you can understand that development also is kind of a cumulative effect, that one consequence or the one decision the thing that you're going to try to do this time, it might not actually work. You can make that decision from the most solid, logical space, but you still might have to try a couple of things here and there, but it's a much better space to make a decision from than this negative emotional one. So there you have it, you guys. I hope that this video helped and there were some positive takeaways from you. And again, if you are interested in building more positive and healthy relationship skills with your child, feel free to click the link below, You can work with me one-on-one or download my free PDF guide on how to have more calm and effective parenting. Until next time, happy parenting.